After Ehud's death, the Israelites again did evil in the Lord's sight. They disobeyed his commandments and began to worship idols. As a consequence, the Lord turned them over to King Jabin of Hazor, a Canaanite king. The commander of King Jabin's army was Sisera, who lived in Harosheth Hagoyim. God allowed the Israelites to be oppressed by their enemies led by General Sisera and King Jabin of Canaan. The powerful Canaanites mistreated the Israelites for 20 years. They raided and robbed them of their crops. They took their cattle. Eventually, the people prayed and cried out to God for help. Deborah, a prophetess, was judging and leading Israel at that time. She lived in the hill country of Ephraim between Ramah and Bethel. People were willing to travel up into the hills for her guidance from God. Deborah summoned Barak, a leader of the Israelites who lived in the land of Naphtali. She said,
"The Lord, the God of Israel, has commanded. Go and march to Mount Tabor with 10,000 men from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun. I will draw out Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his many troops to the river Kishon. And I will give you victory over him."
Barak replied,
"I will go, but only if you go with me. If you won't go with me, I won't go."
Deborah replied,
"I will go with you. But the credit for victory will not be yours. For the Lord will deliver Sisera into the hands of a woman."
So Deborah went with Barak to Kedesh. At Kedesh, Barak called together the tribes of Zebulun and Naphtali, and 10,000 warriors went up with him. Deborah, Barak and 10,000 brave Israelites gathered on Mount Tabor. Sisera, the commander of the Canaanites, organized his 30,000 well-armed men and 900 chariots in the Kishon River valley below. The Israelites grew tense as they saw this mighty foe. How could they possibly fight against such a strong army? The sky grew very dark above them. Then a mighty torrent of rain came. Although outnumbered, Deborah declared,
"Go. This is the day the Lord has given Sisera into your hands. Has not the Lord gone ahead of you?"
So Barak led his 10,000 men down from Mount Tabor to attack the Canaanites. The torrential rain, hail, lightning and thunder confused Sisera and his chariots. The water in the river Kishon rose and flooded the land. Many of the soldiers were swept away, and the heavy chariots got stuck in the mud. Sisera jumped out of his chariot and fled on foot. Barak pursued the fleeing soldiers as far as Harosheth Hagoyim, defeating the whole army. Only Sisera the commander escaped on foot. He ran to Zaananim, near Kedesh. He came to the tent of Jael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, who was on friendly terms with King Jabin. Heber was a descendant of Moses' brother-in-law. Jael went out to meet Sisera and said to him,
"Come in,
Don't be afraid.
So he entered her tent and she covered him with a blanket.
I'm thirsty. Please give me some water.
Sisera begged. She opened a skin of milk, gave him a drink, and covered him up.
Stand in the doorway of the tent. If someone comes by and asks you, "Is anyone in there?" say, "No."
Then he lay down and fell asleep. When Sisera fell asleep from exhaustion, Jael quietly crept up to him, with a hammer and tent peg in her hand. Then she drove the tent peg through his forehead, with such force that it went through into the ground. And so he died. Therefore, a woman became the hero for the victory over Sisera, just as Deborah had prophesied. So, on that day, Israel saw God defeat Jabin, the Canaanite king. And from that time on, Israel became stronger and stronger against King Jabin until they finally destroyed him. Deborah and Barak celebrated the victory with a song of praise to God. Then there was peace in the land for 40 years.